Welcome to the Ewing Barbecue. Today we are paying tribute to Dallas creator, producer, and writer David Jacobs. We lost him on August 20th, 2023. He passed away at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank, California, from a series of infections after a long journey with Alzheimer's disease. He was 84. David was born on August 12, 1939 in Baltimore, Maryland, to Melvin and Ruth Jacobs. David had a younger sister named Susan. Jacobs' dad, Melvin, drove a cab, sold insurance, and worked in a lamp factory to make ends meet, which made him miserable. This heavily influenced David's life as he swore to himself that he was never going to go to work hating what he did. So, after struggling in high school, he enrolled at the Maryland Institute College of Art to pursue his passion for painting. And although he had a lot of passion, he quickly realized he couldn't make a career out of it. So he refocused on writing, which he'd never really considered much before that because it just came so easy to him. But because it came easy to him, he was just naturally amazing at it. He earned a master's degree in art history at Hunter College in New York and landed a steady gig writing biographies for the Book of Knowledge, and Viking Press published his first children's book, Master Painters of the Renaissance, in 1968. Soon after graduation, he moved to New York City, where he worked as an illustrator and researcher for Grolier's Encyclopedia. He soon branched out as a freelance writer of nonfiction articles, making architecture his specialty. He wrote for Esquire, Holiday, and the New York Times Magazine. He also worked as a story editor for American Heritage and covered the art scene for Newsweek. He wrote another book, 1975's Chaplin, The Movies and Charlie, and co-wrote the nonfiction book Police, A Precinct at Work with Sarah Ann Friedman, based on his experience with ride-alongs with the police for 6 months. His marriage to actress Lynn Plachette produced one child, his daughter Albin, but ended in divorce. He later married his second wife Diana, with whom he had 2 children, Aaron and Molly. Jacobs moved to Los Angeles to be closer to his daughter and tried his hand at screenwriting. His script for a proposed pilot miniseries, tentatively named Untitled Linda Evans Project, was later named Dallas, and the rest is history. David is survived by his wife Diana, children Albin, Aaron, and Molly, and grandchildren Riley and Georgia. The following is an archived interview conducted by Ultimate Dallas in 2013. Enjoy.
We're pleased today on Ultimate Dallas to welcome David Jacobs, the creator of Dallas and Knots Landing. David, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions about the original Dallas, the new Dallas, the movie that never happened, and Knots Landing, of course.
Okay.
So we should jump right in.
Okay.
Now, the new Dallas has aired season 1. Have you seen it?
I have, yes.
And what are your overall impressions?
Well, I'm delighted to see Dallas surviving, and being reincarnated again and again. But and I haven't been involved in the new one. Didn't want to be directly involved because I'd already written Dallas. I've done Dallas. I'd like to see somebody else take a different take on it. Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty good. I do think it's pretty good. I think it's finding itself. I think it's a little bit too plot heavy, but that's because they don't quite know the characters yet, and they'll get onto them.
Right. So you think fans should give them a chance to get settled in, as every new show does, and see how it settles out?
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, it takes a while for television shows to, especially the character-driven shows, to sort of find their rhythm and to balance the character against plot. They really shouldn't be separate things, but they generally are. And I think, the 10 shows were promising. I haven't seen any of the 15 of the second season shows yet.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you might have done differently? I know you maybe perhaps reverse the roles of John Ross and Christopher, or?
I would have. I know I've said that a couple of times, but I always say that not as a suggestion of what should have been done, but how I would have done it. How I, who did it one way, would have just naturally not wanted to recreate what was there, but to go another way. And what I'm saying is that I think in a way they were, and I appreciate this, more faithful to the original than I would have been, because I would have wanted to do something different. And I thought one of the first things that came to mind was reversing the kids, which would have made sense, because Christopher's the adopted one.
Right,
and
has Christopher
told that, so he would want to grow up to be the baddest Ewing of them all. And John Ross could be Johnny Rockefeller Jr., who spends his life doing good deeds to kind of clean up the damage that his father did to the family name. And I thought that would also create, I like the idea because it would create a father-son conflict. In fact, two layers of silent father-son conflict. And, as an old veteran of this, I know that there's almost no better.
Mm-hmm. How have you found the portrayals of the actors? Hello? Hello?
Hello. I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello? Oh, I think we lost him.
Have we?
Yeah. Might have to.
It's still saying he's here. Hold on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you still, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we'll have to do a little editing. Sounded like an airplane.
Hi, I don't know what's wrong, but it was...
Hello, hi. We lost you there.
Yeah, and putting my plug in, although I am fully charged, and I have 5 bars here.
Sounded like an airplane.
Yeah, give me a number. In case I have to hang up and get you on a hard line.
Right. Okay. Right. Josh, have you got a number?
No, I'm on a computer.
Right. Yeah. So that's So
all right. Well, let's just leave it like this, and I've moved to a safer area.
We'll just keep going then. Try to.
Okay. Yeah. So just to recap then. So I think Josh, you're about to ask about the portrayal of the other characters. I think
of the actors portraying John Ross and Christopher. How have you found their performances?
I think they're fine. I think I think they're fine. I think they're nicely shaded, so that even though they haven't, as I said, I would have done it more radically, but they're not. Even John Ross, they're nicely shaded. They're not pure hero and pure villain.
So it's a little bit of gray in there.
Yeah, which I always liked.
Yeah.
Not saying everybody was gray.
Yeah, which is interesting because it seems like some of the characters on the new show feel more three-dimensional, like the Knots Landing characters. Like Bobby's conflicts with Christopher seem to arise out of his overprotectiveness towards his son, and it kind of resembles Karen's relationship with her children. Do you see any of that in this?
I hadn't thought of it, but it's true. But whenever you play the gray, as you say, you're more grounded. Because you have everybody has a kid, or everybody is a kid to a parent. Mm-hmm. And those sort of relationships, when you portray them, we've long past the time in the 50s when father knew best. And
yeah.
So that I find it okay. I find it not as interesting as yet, but it'll get there.
Right, because as you said, it's still early, and
it's still early, and it's very plot heavy. That is not. I don't know whether it's a critique or not, but that's as close as I'm going to come to doing it. Saying something critical that it seems overly plotted to me.
Right, and
that's usually a symptom of a thinness in the character.
Yeah, that's interesting, because a lot of fans have said that, comparing it to the original, or even like Knots Landing. And one of the, I know that in the US it's got like strong ratings. In the UK it's kind of lost a lot of viewers, and some fans feel it's because it's so plot driven, and possibly perhaps because it hasn't got a root for character like in original Dallas you had Pamela Barnes-Ewing, who kind of took you into that world, and there isn't necessarily that kind of character in this. Do you feel that's important?
I do. I don't think of so much it has to be a rooting character, although it generally is. But but it's somebody for the audience to hook onto, to take you into the thing. And that was definitely Pamela, because she was an outsider coming into this formidable family and formidable environment. So we all saw it the way Pamela did, And Pamela was also, really played this, but she really had very middle class aspirations. She didn't want to be rich and famous and all that. She wanted a little house in the country. That goes all the way back to the beginning. But she never had the same values, and we like to think she had the values that we think ordinary people like to have. Of course, they don't anymore. Everybody wants to be rich.
And you once stated that Pam was initially one of your favorite characters to write for. Why would you say that was?
When I first wrote it, and I don't think I said she was my favorite. I thought she was should be more important. Okay. And that she was, she was named for a good friend of mine. So good for her. Young woman I knew. It was the only woman I knew from Texas, so I named her Pamela. And I just thought she was, because initially her role, remember, Bobby was not supposed to be as strong as he was. He was supposed to be like a brick on Captain Hudson. He was supposed to be a blank piece of paper. He liked being a playboy. He didn't really want to go in the family business. But it was to be Pamela, and this I guess was done. It was to be Pamela who would say to him, you can't let your brother just do everything, because it's going to come back and slap you in the face. And besides, you got to grow up. You have to be a man. You have to. And that would be, and so JR knew that, and I guess in the first 5, and then the first season, you had that because JR knew that she was the enemy, and getting rid of her was prime necessity. And that's what I meant. That's what I mean too when I mean if it's character driven, if the conflicts are built into the structure of the piece, then you don't have to go. You could have JR and Pamela in the same room talking about the weather, and there's still there's tension. Because you know that he wants her out, and you know not to trust him. He tells her how nice she looks. What does he mean by that?
Yeah.
Her ending obviously left fans cheated. Why do you feel that they left her character hanging? And is it often a difficult decision to kill off a main character? I know you had that dilemma with Laura on Knots Landing.
I did. So I remember, and to be completely open, I wasn't running Dallas. I was running Knots Landing. After I created Dallas, but I was a story editor in another show, and it was the first thing I did. And although I went, I consulted every year on the Bible, and my office was directly down from Larry Katz's, and we discussed things frequently. I didn't run it. It wasn't my decision to get rid of her in that way. So, and unfortunately, the people whose decision it was are gone. Leonard and Phil mostly, but I don't think they had a terrific relationship with Victoria, and that, unfortunately, sometimes when you're doing something that lasts as long as these shows last, that does color the responses of some producers, not me, certainly.
Well, she's obviously a big cliffhanger here in 2012 still. People continue asking about her and where she went and what happened. Regarding something like Laura on Knots Landing, was it a conscious decision not to show her death on screen?
Well, we always used to say don't show anybody. Leonard, who was it? Fred Silverman used to be president of APC. Used to always, it was attributed to him as, "Did you see the body? No, then she's not dead." Then, you want to bring her back, bring her back. If you saw the body and you're in the coffin closed and everything, you can. That's when you did. You have to be careful on these shows. Not to, as they get older and they get a little weaker, and you have to trim down your cast. You want to be careful not to cut off a real limb, Mm-hmm. And when we got to that stage on Knots Landing, where it was cut or cancel, and nothing probably, and so Dallas should have ended 4 years earlier, 4 years earlier, and they just kind of coasted. And you have to make those decisions. I mean, they're horrible decisions because your family is in place, Mm-hmm. And losing Julie Harris on Knots Landing was I think I cried. I mean, literally. And Laura, you had to go according to who's tuning in to watch the show, and you have various ways of measuring that. And you have your gut feeling, which is usually the most accurate. That people really leaving watching the show for Laura. Now, when we had what's her name, Lisa Hartman, then that little supposed affair between her and Laura made it more fun. It made it interesting. At that point, maybe people, it was funny in those days because you couldn't, if we did it now, we just say they went all, they did. They wanted to run off together. And there it was all euphemisms and possibilities. And I think that's what more fun sometimes. We had some really funny scenes. But anyway, we had to get rid of it. And John and Richard and Laura were really after Tenny and Ginger. Richard and Laura had to go. We wouldn't cut into it any deeper than that. But I'm the main people. Mm-hmm. So you just have to be careful because, however it's done, it's going to leave a residue. I mean, you're asking me now about Victoria leaving the show. Fortunately. I'm old and senile, I don't remember all the details.
Right. Some would argue that Knots Landing would have been more a successful show to bring back in a way that it can relate to the audience, with Karen being the voice of Middle America. Do you think that would ever happen? And what would your take be on them?
If Knots Landing came back, I mean, I won't say that my father and I don't ever talk about that. But if Knots Landing came back, it would have to come back as new kids on a new cul-de-sac, a whole nother real generation. And I don't think it ever would have happened because Knots Landing, as glorious as it was, especially in its prime, it was never the worldwide success that Dallas was, and it wasn't the valuable brand that Dallas was. Mm-hmm. So I doubt that anybody would have done it again. If they did do it again, how would you do it? I don't know. You launch it maybe the same way they launched this with Karen and Mac and Val and Gary being really the only survivors, depending if you could get them. And but really set yourself free fairly early, because otherwise the older people that are going to watch the show, they're going to stop, and you don't really. They're going to stop if you get rid of them too fast, so they're not going to watch it if they're not there. But I think it's hard. Now, so far, I'm saying I will say I think they're succeeding in balancing the participation of the old to the new. But then I hear that they want to bring in some Carrie and Val, who were launched on Dallas. And I said, oh, that's nice, but why do they have to do that? I think they should be kind of weaning themselves, not staying on the pit,
Right. Now, what would you, since they are bringing them back, Gary and Val, now that you mentioned them, how would you want to see and not see them depicted in the new series at this point in their lives?
Can I say something off the record?
Yeah.
I would want to see them in better shape than they are. I would want to. They're both delightful people, but anyway, ask the question again.
Yeah.
I have no idea how they're going to use it. I think you'd have to activate Lucy a little bit beforehand to set it up. I can't see them quite setting, although he is a brother, and if he hears that Bobby is sick, he could easily come visit. But you want more than come visit. You would want something in the something in the wills or something in the estate that would bring them in, so that they're in there. They come in a way of conflict. But I haven't thought of those things. I really don't think much of about stories for them. I don't think much of stories anymore. Since I've retired. When I'm retired.
Right.
Is there anything that you wouldn't like to see happen to the characters of Val and Gary? Is there anything you would not be happy with if you saw it depicted in a certain way?
I don't know. They have children, right? So they have the twins. So I guess they be reasonably. No, I can't think of anything except that I don't want to see them down and out. I would like to think that they made a good adjustment to their life.
Right.
And it's hard to believe that, but as on as volatile as they were. But I've just become a grandfather this year twice, the first time, and I find it. I know this is an old story. Everybody first becomes a grandfather feels it. It's really like no other feeling that you've ever had, because it's more than you have with your kids, because with your kids, when you're raising them, you have responsibilities too. You have to teach them values and do all those things. Grandparent, you just say, go do it, and let me do it with you, and here's some money. But if I could find them in that position, and one of their grandchildren were somehow involved and tied in, that would be nice. I'd like to see a real set of grandparents. Hasn't been a real set of grandparents since the Waltons. That felt real, and they only felt real for a couple of seasons.
Right.
So I don't really have any. I'd like to be surprised.
Now, obviously, Gary and Val came from the Dallas universe. There's been talk about possibly a character like Abby crossing over. I know she had an affair with JR on Knots Landing, and she was heavy after Jock's will and Gary's inheritance. Could you see her crossing over?
Well, if they Cross Her Over, it's a whole different story because if they cross her, they can use Gary and Val easily because they were created on Dallas. Dallas was my first show. I had that deal. It was a pretty weak deal, but I never complained because that's what greased the skids of my career. By the time of Knots Landing, I was had a much better contract, and I had their defined. They have to come to me and ask, I guess, and they have to, and I have to figure out. Then it becomes a legal situation. So I don't know if it's legal. I mean, I worked it out quite agreeably, but it's hard to think of what would you do with it when you came over? I don't know. Let them think of it. I don't know. I haven't given that any thought.
Right. And just to clarify, what's your current status on the ownership of the brand? I know there's movie rights and Knots Landing and the TV and...
I don't want to get into that because some of it is vague anyway. And I had, because of the guild contract at that time, separated rights, which meant that I owned the movie rights.
Okay.
And book. And so when there was talk of doing the movie, they had to buy the rights from me, and that was very nice. But and a complete separate negotiation. But the other rights, spin-off sequels, whatever, are sort of vaguely touched in. What was Knots Landing? Knots Landing was really the first conceived in my mind. You know that story. I went in and pitched Knots Landing, and they said they'd like to get into that area, but just continuing drama, but they want something glitzier, something more of a saga. So we came up with Dallas. And then when Dallas became and become successful, they said they pulled out the Knots Landing presentation that I had left with them, and they said, "Is there any way to make this a Dallas spinoff?" Of course, it was easy because it was 4 couples. Just make one of them Gary and Val.
Right.
But I do have. I mean, this was when I made the Knots Landing. I think it was 1890. So that's good. It was 1980, and by that time, I think it's all listed what my royalties and percentage and profit participation would be. So, but I don't know. I don't want to get into that.
Yeah. Now, the Dallas movie, I know it originally started off as you were going to have it more of a dark Enron-like story, and then it kind of changed into the aborted John Travolta and Jennifer Lopez thing that happened. How did that all progress to that point and end up where it ended up?
Well, again, that was one I didn't know how to write. And again, because I'd already written it, and I thought somebody should be more. I always say that somebody should be more 21st century, than I am. And then they bring in people who are more 21st century. And when we have meetings in the room, I seem to be the youngest guy in the room. At least in my head, I think much more radically, very conservative. And that script, nobody really wanted to. Nobody, meaning the studio and the writer, really wanted to do Dallas. And Dallas is a slightly over the top but still grounded serial, and based on enormous wealth, a family of enormous wealth and enormous power. So I guess it was natural that the studio always wanted to do it comedically, but then it kept getting more extreme. And I wasn't writing it. It was really between them and the studio. And Bob Harlinger was writing it. He was a good writer. But, at one point, somebody said, well, it should be like Talladega Nights. And I said to the producing partner, I think I'm going to take a vacation right now. I don't know. How the hell do you make like Talladega Nights? I mean, you could do, sometimes it just be the ultimate soap opera, but nighttime soap opera.
Right.
And I think the main problem was it was always going to be an expensive movie, and they never got a script to tell it. Mm-hmm. And it was so much indecision. And there was turmoil within the company. And I was hungry all the time. After those meetings.
Right, yeah. When did you hear that Dallas was coming back? I know had been talk about different incarnations over the years, and did you feel it was a good time to bring it back at this time as opposed to when they did the first reunion movie in 1996?
Yeah, that 1996 movie was very good. Neither of the reunion movies were really good. I think it was too soon for a reunion. It's like going to your fifth reunion of your high school class. Everybody's still, there. Same guys you're seeing it with. But I always thought that it could come back again, but I guess I never thought of it as coming back as a weekly television show. It come back as a movie, or come back as a series of television movies. That would be the way they do in England, where where you have maybe 6 hours each year. 2-3 hours,
right?
2 hours,
like Columbo did in the United States too.
Well, like Columbo did. That is a perfect example. And but I never tried to. I meant it when I said when I retired from television, I had other projects I wanted to, and they were novel projects, and anything that I had to push the tab key more than once, I wouldn't do to write the script. But so I never. When I found out about it, I just heard about it. Mike Parliament heard about it in New York and called me up, and he was angry I hadn't told him. I said, I haven't told you. What are you talking about? He said, why didn't you tell me about this? I said, what about Dallas? What about Dallas? And so we're doing it. Yeah. So that's how I found out.
Right. And it was always, a lot of us flash back to a conversation that Barbara Belgetti's character, Miss Ellie, had with Sue Ellen, where she talked about the battle would be going on 30 years later between John Ross and Christopher, and she wasn't going to be around to see it. And is that what Sue Ellen wanted for her son's future and everything? It really, in some ways, it foreshadowed that the series was going to be more about legacies and could come back 30 years later.
Well, it has, right? And it is about legacies. But let's see what they do with it. I said I would have done it differently, but I'm not critical of what they're doing.
Right.
I would have done it differently just to keep myself interested. Right. I'm delighted that it's back on, and I'm delighted, to get phone calls like this and to be able to talk for a while about it. And I don't know about right or wrong time. It's such a crazy time right now, isn't it? I mean, it's just nuts. And I thought, like in early 2003, one of the things we're going to do in one version of the script, we're going to open up with Bobby and JR at a meeting with some people in California, some power people, and the lights dimmed. The lights went out. I don't know if you remember the 2003 or 2002 brownouts that we had here. And everybody gets alarmed, and then JR whispers to Talia, don't worry, it's us. We're doing this. And I thought that was a nice topic point. And we talked about making it. And then you cut to JR coming out of the White House. He's a friend of Cheney. The Cheney Bush administration, I thought, was like watching Dallas, I mean, we didn't maybe get into the loves, maybe into the romances, but we did get into the, it felt like Dallas had become Did you see a piece that, I forgot the name of the woman, I have it around somewhere, that woman wrote for the New York Times magazine about 2 weeks before it premiered? It was great. It was...
I think I did, yes.
It was... took up those opposite pages, if you want, the centerpiece. I don't know what it is. But she really had a take about how Dallas came. The time when Dallas came was so right for Dallas. Well, I couldn't know that. I couldn't be prescient. I didn't know Ronald Reagan was going to be president. I didn't know that all of that, everything was going to change. I was lucky. And but when you think of the atmosphere of Dallas, I thought that with that atmosphere, the people of Dallas show would have been completely comfortable in the Dallas.
And it was obviously coming off of the 15 years before the show went on the air the first time. It was coming off the whole Kennedy assassination and the negative stigma that was associated with it.
Well, that we never dealt with that. I already said that the first time because because Kennedy assassination was 15 years earlier.
Right.
So it was. I wasn't sure where it was set. I did a couple of pages, just saying about the characters in the Royal family, and I sent it over to Mike Filerman, and I didn't hear from him. I called him. I said, "What'd you think?" He said, "Oh, I already sent it over there." And I said, "What'd you send?" Oh, well, really? He said, "Yeah, I just tore off the cover page." I said, "Well, why?" He said, "You don't want to say untitled." Untitled. So I said, "What'd you call it?" He said, "Dallas." And I remember saying, "Dallas? Kennedy was killed in Dallas. I don't know if I wanted to be in Dallas." And I knew enough that Dallas is a banking town. Houston is the cattle town. It's not as interesting. But and then Dallas, the city of Dallas, began to turn itself into the TV Dallas. I think she had some of that in that article.
Right. And regarding the original Dallas, it was often said that if you had continued to run it instead of Leonard Katzman, it would have been canceled earlier. Why do you think?
No, I said that.
You said
I always say that.
Oh.
Yeah, but I always say that as false modesty. I always say if I had run the show instead of Leonard, it may not be the hit it is today. But I never meant that. It's just because Leonard was always busy saying, "Oh, but the difference between the guy that runs, the producer and the creator is." I was always laughing at him because I didn't tell him, but you're being stupid. I get more space in these articles because I'm funny. And I say things like, if I had run the show, every night before I go to sleep, I say a barucha, to Leonard Katzman, because if I had run it, it definitely would have been a slightly different show. And there might be some truth in that because my own sensibilities are very middle class. Very middle class. I always write. I mean, Not Landing was the perfect show for me to do. Mm-hmm. And even as I wrote Dallas to these rich people, I had at the center of it, and as the what do you call that? The thing that kicks it off. I had at the center of it, and as a catalyst to all the events that provided story for Dallas was a woman who had very middle class aspirations, who didn't want to be rich.
Mm-hmm. And that was Pam.
And even when I think now of the remake, I thought of not the remake, to be careful what we call it, but the new Dallas
2.0.
I think it should have been. It should be more like What about if Anne had been black? He's been married to her for 15 years, and it just would have been something audacious,
Mm-hmm.
and that would have fitted in with the times more. Now I wonder if, even though we have enormous wealth now and all this separation, I wonder if that wouldn't have made it. Not even comment on it, not even making a point, a plot point, but just to color the landscape, just to color the But by the way, I should say in this thing, I absolutely love the way the show looks.
Oh, the cinematography.
Yeah, cinematography and widescreen, high def.
Right.
Seeing Dallas so big and all that, the widescreen, it just looks beautiful.
Yeah, I think Rodney Charters has done a great job in coming over from 24 with really capturing it, as you said.
Yeah, it looks great.
Joan Van Ark was often likes to imagine a modern-day position of Valene in power at this point, and I think it echoes the way Linda Gray has asked Sue Ellen to be portrayed in the new series as kind of a powerhouse role model. Does that lead to a dead end, and when you get rid of some of their character neuroses, or would it be more interesting to see them have...
Well, I don't see Valene being in a position of power. I could see her being... I just don't see that kind of so strong a transition. I mean, she's a strong woman, but she became a strong woman before your eyes. Mm-hmm. But it's not... I don't see that. It could really backfire. I thought that Miss Ellie should have been a strong part, like Ann Richards, the woman who was killed in the Governor of Texas. Somebody like that, nobody like that.
Right.
I don't think Ann Richards was well known at the time that I did it, but I mean a character like that. And and that would have been a transition, but you have to believe the transition. And I sort of believe it with Linda.
Right, because she went...
Yeah, they figured she had so many interesting flaws or characteristics, questionable characteristics, that it would have been fun to see her straighten herself out, straighten herself out to that degree. I would have liked to have seen that happen on screen, practically.
Mm-hmm.
Or become that woman,
Yeah, I think one of the things with Sue Ellen, again, from feedback from fans, is that because obviously one of the reasons everyone kind of adhered to her and loved her in the first place was the whole drinking and the kind of the conflict with JR. And once that was removed, it kind of felt that she was the character was kind of lost, and in a way, and I think Linda herself has said it, even with the new series, it kind of felt she didn't know really where the character was going, where the character was now, what she should be doing with it. It was kind of slightly in limbo.
I would make the same suggestion now at the time. Isn't she going to run for governor now?
Yeah, her character is running for governor right now.
Yeah. So maybe they're good there, maybe that'll... But even Texas is different now. I don't know. Where are you calling from, Arthur? Where are you situated? Where are you calling from?
Oh, I'm in Boston.
England or the U.S.? I'm sorry?
I'm in Boston, up on the East Coast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just curious.
And, let's see, you mentioned the plot-driven shows over character-driven shows. In Knots Landing and Dallas, we obviously had quirky characters, Gary, Valene, Digger, Richard Avery. Was there something natural about them which you think is missing from shows today in general?
No, I think shows today are terrific. The good ones. I think, I really liked Big Love. People always sometimes surprised when I say that. I thought that was terrific.
Yeah, I like that. That was really good.
Huh?
I said, that was really good. I like that series. That was really good.
Yeah, and I miss it. And then when you go, and like Boardwalk Empire, I started out liking very much, and then I started kind of soured on it. And I don't know why, because once it was established that he had the values, or that that he had the absence of values, he was a vicious character. Once that was established, all you could really do is have other people react to it, but without his having a sympathetic. He's been sympathetic in some way and having a specific goal to get to. But I think most of the other people who were disappointed in him provided now have obstacles to his movie. I'm just saying Chekhov right now, but it's just they needed fear, desire, belief, and they didn't have it, and I got tired of it. But Bigelow seemed like humans. And it made human, a community I would never think about being human. It would never occur to me these people were human, and so I don't really go with that. Mad Men too. I like a lot of the newer shows. I don't watch them that often, so I can't be literate because I tend to watch less television, especially this year when I just political shows. I forgot where I was going with that. But
do you think
what was the question? Should we repeat this?
It was about the quirky characters that on the character-driven shows that.
So you had it felt like I think the question was kind of framed around like in the 70s. It seemed to be more like you had these characters who were kind of larger than life. Like you had Digger Barnes in the pilot episode miniseries, and then those characters don't seem to appear as much on mainstream TV. It doesn't have those larger than life characters. Like in New Dallas, I guess it doesn't seem to have those quirky characters of something like Richard Avery or Digger.
Oh, Digger was great.
And that also
now you make
that also
now
brings
my
up
heartache.
Yeah, that also brings up the fact that TV shows nowadays, we've talked about Mad Men, some of those, they have shorter, more condensed seasons. Do you find that benefits them more, or do people watch and then go, I just got into it, now the season's over? And
no, I don't think so. When they're successful, I think, what happened with The Sopranos, everybody really was disappointed that they skipped a year, and then when it came back, it was great. It was a great amazing. I think I have two answers to that. And if you saw me right now, I'd have a line down the middle of myself, one side blue and one side red. But the is that when I think about how much less work they have to do, and about the fact that they can have the luxury of having scripts before they start shooting, which we almost never did. We almost gobbled up our scripts. We were almost behind from the third or fourth show on. And to turn out 22 hours, a 22-hour movie every year is really what it was. There's a lot of work and a lot of pressure. Now, looking back, nothing made me happier than to find out we couldn't get an actor we wanted to get, and therefore the whole show that's supposed to start shooting tomorrow we have to throw out. And we have to come up with this, not say, oh, shit, no, terrible, horrible. And then, as somebody once said, looking at me, I've never seen him so happy. Because they're the worst. I just personally get off on that. Dallas used to lock up their number and lock up copies of their Bible. The Knots Landing Bible, you leave around anywhere, because we weren't going to follow it anyway. I mean, it wasn't a deliberate decision, but on Sunday, the phone rang on Sunday, and it was Mike, and I was there, and he said, I have an idea. Or you say, what do you think if we did this? And if it was a good idea and it was better than what we had, we'd go with it. And, of course, dominoes would fall. And by the end of the season, we were nowhere near where we wanted to go, or where we had planned to go. But I like to think that the show was better and fresher for that. So to answer one side, I can say I really envy these guys. They're only doing 10, 12, maybe 15 shows a year, and they get to have a nice, instead of having a 6-week hiatus, they get to have a real quarter of the year off, because they don't make as much money either nowadays as we did then. So we had more money to spend, but no time to spend it. Whereas now, I guess you really have to have it's hard to pull a profit on these shows. I have no doubt that the studio finds a way, but it's not always shared. But I'd love the idea of having all that time to do shows and to plan arcs and to just get it out of your system and do it, and then you're away from it. Mm-hmm. Doing a show for 14 years like Knots Landing. The only time I wasn't thinking about it or working on it was when I was doing a pilot for another new show. So it wasn't exactly taking time off.
Right.
You know.
And when you have
That's it.
when you have a long-running series, what would your approach be to something like continuity? I know some issues have come up in the new series. Is there any way to ensure that continuity issues don't happen, or is it just inevitable that mistakes are going to be made?
Well, we tried not to make mistakes, but I like the way Leonard and Phil came up with their way of dealing with it, say it was a dream. But when Leonard told me, I knew that they were unhappy in that 8th season. Leonard's office was right above mine. The building was 3-story building, and the offices were like twins. And we talked more on the steps than we did any other time. I'd see him coming down the steps. And I knew they were unhappy with the show, and he was going to come back, and he was going to try to get Bobby back. He was trying to get Patrick back. So I said, "You getting Patrick back?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "It's not true what I've heard, is it?" He said, "What?" And somebody said, "Maybe you make the last season between." He said, "Yeah." He says, "He's no value to us as anybody else. He's only a value to us as Bobby Ewing, the William Bobby." And I can't think. I said, "Well, that's the worst thing I ever heard." And he said, "Well, give me something better." And I couldn't come up with anything better. So you just go with it. It causes a lot of talk. But I also think that it didn't really save the show, the ratings, and it didn't. It kept it going in a more interesting way. But you have to be careful what you do to the audience, I think. But when you say that you did shows as best you could to deal with Bobby's death, and you get the audience crying and mourning with the characters, I think they're going to be resentful. I think they're going to be resentful if you then tell them it didn't even happen, and they were manipulated for a fraud. But I guess people don't think that deeply and don't care. I mean, not that that's deep, but you know what I mean. I guess they don't go into it with that much consideration. But continuity, I can't think of too many times when we had continuity problems. Or at least ones that we didn't deal with.
Right, I know.
Can you?
I think each time they brought Jenna Wade back, it seemed like there was.
Oh no, down in Dallas. On
Knots Landing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
No, I don't know. I can't think of any. I think with New Dallas, there's been a couple of things, minor things in my opinion, but a couple of things. And I guess the question, with a long-running series when there's so many episodes, how do you stop that from happening? I mean, is it just one of those things? It just, it's inevitable.
Well, you do have a Bible every year, and even though you ignore it, like we did, you still stay in the general shape of the season. And the only time I remember playing with the possibility, that is, inviting the possibility, was when Lisa Hartman left, and we really wanted her back. We really felt that we lost a lot of texture when she went. Mm-hmm. Because she was dishy like Abby, but Abby was out there. She was accessible to Lisa. Just a little bit slutty, and that was sort of a really lovable, that character. So we brought her back just as a lookalike, and we made her so different that I remember my mother said, "Is that her?" She wasn't even sure it was Lisa Hartman. So, when I first started doing television, which is in 77, when we talked about casting Dallas, Barbara Miller was in charge of casting. And she said something I like to requote a lot. Somebody pointed out that Barbara Bel-Geddes was only 9 years older than Larry Hagman. And Barbara said, and everybody said, oh, well, and then Barbara Miller said, only for a minute. And I guess what she meant is the audience is going to say, we'll see him, and somebody will say or not say, isn't she a little bit young to be his mother? And then it's over, That's the minute. Then you keep on going. She's still playing his mother, and it's not something that you have to live with when you make when you do. Don't not do the cast that you want just because of one of those things. Because one of those little factoids, because they're not going to hurt you.
Right.
You'll only notice it for a minute. So that kind of I didn't mind having. I didn't care too much about sticking to the. I think our children on our show grew up a lot faster than children do. I require, we go from a baby character to a 2-year-old quite fast. And I didn't mind doing that because we never said it was in exact real time. It was in rough real time. But I can't think of anything that we did where we ran into. The big serious problem was when they wanted to make on Dallas. They put down a formidable entourage. It was Leonard and Phil. Leonard and Phil never came anywhere together. And Art Lewis and Camille. And they said, now, is it absolutely certain in the pilot that Ray and Lucy had sex in the hayloft in the pilot? I said, absolutely. It was the most famous part of the pilot. And because they wanted to make Ray into her into Jock's illegitimate son, and they really begged me to tell them it wasn't so. I said, well, maybe it's just, he just jerked him off. I don't know. Maybe we didn't see it, So I think they just went with it. And then I just they had to do, maybe it was anything but thing,
Yes.
Limited to second base.
Call me Pam. Call me Pam. Yes.
Oh, was that great? I forgot about that. I really had a dirty mind. Not dirty, I mean, really the business.
And they're
I was going to say, just jumping back to the earlier question about Pamela and her exit, and so you mentioned that perhaps the way she was left hanging was due to relationships with producers and stuff. Can you say any more about that?
I don't know, and I'm not being, I'm not playing hard to get. I knew that we were both shows were at a stage where we were having to trim back, which I used to call amputate, because that's how I would do. I'm not going to amputate any more limbs from my show, and then I would amputate somebody because otherwise I didn't have a show. And but Michael and I decided, a little digression, to not do it anymore, Knots Landings, because of that. Even though they would have given us another one, but another season, Sagansky was the guy. But at that time, we were just doing harm, And so when Victoria left, I just. I don't even remember anybody saying we're not bringing Victoria back. It just changed. I mean, things were just changing. The other women taking, involved in Bobby's life. She didn't really have, that I can think of. You probably know the show better than I do, but she didn't really have an investment in the stories that were coming up.
That's right. Yeah.
Of course, they could have put her in. You could have given her some.
Yeah, that seemed to happen after. Obviously, there was the Dream season, and Phil Capice left, and then the following season, when Patrick came back, it seemed like Pam was then suddenly she became more sidelined as a character during that season before she left, and then she left at the end of it,
like window dressing.
Yeah. I really don't know. The person to talk to is Camille. Oh no, Camille wasn't there anymore either. God, Art's dead. Bill's dead. Leonard's dead.
Jeez.
I'm waiting any minute.
No.
Don't go anywhere near a guy with a beard and a staff. I'm much younger than they were. I just don't know. But really, by that time, I was probably losing Laura and Richard. We lost before Laura.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. And that was a shame because some of the best written stuff I know we're not talking about Knots. The best looking stuff, the best written stuff that we did was for Laura and Sumner. We once had a little night where I forgot what they were giving us, an award for something. And nobody in the industry watched Knots Landing because it was always against the Bochco shows. So we were against Hill Street Blues, and then, which we used to beat. And then L.A. Law, which was sort of even with. They kind of beat us, but we beat them on their cliffhangers when they went head to head. But anyway, it was very hard to I'm just trying to think. Now it was I wouldn't know about what was happening in the house. I was too worried about my own. I had my own source. I had my own problems eliminating characters. I don't know that it's too good an idea to look. I know your readers are kind of interesting, but are kind of interested in Victoria. Victoria always sold, when her cover was in a magazine, so they doubled their sales. Mm. Very popular with women who read women's magazines, and because the older women, married women, liked Sue Ellen, and really wanted her to get her own, But Victoria was more. She was like Melanie Griffith in Working Girl. Remember that movie?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she wasn't that. She was really somebody that came out of there and had the opportunity to come out of one environment, had the opportunity to go into another, and didn't like it too much. It really is true that Victoria was supposed to be the central character. And when we first pitched the show, they told me that they had Linda Evans under contract. And so what I really had written on those pages that I told you about earlier was Untitled Linda Evans series. Mm-hmm. And Michael took that off, and he said, Linda Evans is never going to do this. They're looking for a piece. They're not looking to put her in an ensemble piece, although later she was, she did Dynasty. But, and, I didn't want to say anything, so I just said Dallas. So the part became smaller, actually, because in the original pilot draft, which I wouldn't have a clue where it is, she was supposed to be more central. She was supposed to be more, and the decision to make Bobby strong already, or stronger than this, also is what made J.R. possible, because we didn't have a strong. Bobby was supposed to be, as I said, brick on a cotton Hudson roof, and his he was supposed to take a little. It was supposed to require a little effort on Pamela's part to get him to go and take a seat in the office and take charge of the code, take on some responsibility. But they all decided that they needed a more heroic male. And they might have been right. I mean, I'm never saying this wrong, because obviously this was at the beginning of a show that became Dallas. But making him that strong that early really made him kind of irrelevant, or less relevant in the beginning, and so gave her less because she was supposed to have conflict with JR, but his plan, she was to have a lot of conflict with Bobby. She marries you, and let's get out of here. I don't want to live here. I don't want to live with your family. This kind of thing.
Well, there was that talk I've heard before about, somewhere along the line, someone said that they wanted to kill Bobby after the first 5 episodes and have...
Yeah, Michael said it.
Oh, it was Michael. That.
Yeah, but it was not. Yeah, it wasn't said in. I don't know. It was just say it to consider it, because we were having trouble getting him. He already looked peachy in those first 5. In those first 5, only 3 of them were any good, and they were in fact good. The 5th one was the best one. But that was. But he was already. I was already finding him difficult because he's too. He's too easy to say. But he'd be a mess, and then he became a mess.
Mm-hmm.
I say this is the only conversation I've had about Dallas, and not saying in the beginning that sort of makes me remember how much fun it was. Usually I'm out of there. I'm glad I'm out of there, but it was really a lot of fun.
Right. And I kind of draw parallels to what just came out in the last week or so when Disney is buying George Lucas, and he's going into retirement, and he wants someone else to carry Star Wars forward. I kind of see a lot of parallels with you saying that Dallas let someone else do it for the 21st century. Do you kind of feel that way?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do that. I know that's not the way you get rich. I didn't want to do any more of these continuing dramas. I didn't even want to, and I stopped. We did one called Secrets of Midland Heights, which was terrific, and then one. Then I did a couple with other writers. I let them do Behringer's and later Home Fun. But it was. I didn't want to keep doing that over and over again. I didn't realize there was supposed to be a Knots Landing Miami and Knots Landing Philadelphia. All to do the same shows over and over. And even Stephen Bochco did. Well, he had more of a genre of his own. We weren't doing the same thing over and over again. And I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to do different kind of shows, and I did make flops. But for whatever reason. So. Yes, but anyway, I didn't want to. I wouldn't want to go back to do it again.
Right. So
I'd be afraid of getting it wrong. Isn't that funny? Because I didn't knowingly get it right, but I'd be afraid. Well, now I just don't do it anymore.
Well, you've
too old to have grandchildren.
Well, you've created a hell of a legacy too. Some shows that are still talked about all these years later, and one back on the air, and.
There is no doubt in my mind what it's going to say in the first line of my obituary. Right. To be David Jacobs, creator of Dallas. And you know what? I wish it was that he cured cancer or brought peace to the world. But still creating that show is not nothing.
And one more question from me before we wrap up. You mentioned in the beginning that the new show obviously takes patience to get the characters down and everything like that. What advice would you have to diehard Dallas fans that are nitpicking over little things and are frustrated with the new show? Would you tell them to stick with it and see how it develops?
Yes, absolutely. They're in the hands of a very good writer, and a writer who comes from an entirely different background than mine of the people that have done the show. A whole different set of experiences. As she relaxes into it, and she's very faithful to the old show. She said many times, and I know she told people this, whatever happened on Dallas, on the original Dallas, is history. We can't mess with that. And that's very nice. And that's, and I admire her for that. I think that she's going to, I think the show's going to succeed, and it's got 15 episodes for next year. I know it's fallen off far, but on some level, it's a big brand, and it's worth a lot of money, and it seems to gain audiences. It was very successful. Even after it dropped, it was very successful. It was easily got the numbers it required to get a renewal on cable. So absolutely stick with it, because she's going to begin bringing in her experience, her life's experience, and what she knows. And those are completely different things than what I knew, or than what were my life's experiences. And she's talented enough that it's going to ooze through. It's going to come through, and then the show is going to be its own show. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay, and what are you doing with anything you're working on or enjoying your time, or?
No, I had we don't have to get into this, but I was working on a novel that I really want to finish, and and then I had an automobile accident in 2004, and had a compound, a compression fracture in my back, and I've never really gotten back into writing. I don't even know whether, I write great emails and stuff, but I've just sort of had to face up to the possibility that I would. At first it was medical, but who knows? Maybe it became psychological. I was extremely prolific. I was extremely easy writer, and it's okay with me if I don't. I always think there's one more thing in me, but I don't want it to be another television show. I'd rather it be the novel.
Right. I know there was. I'm not sure if there's another David Jacobs, but there was a series of 24 declassified novels, and one of them was written by a David Jacobs. That wasn't you, was it?
What's the declassified novel?
It was just based on the series 24. They were just,
no, that wasn't.
Okay.
And it's just David Jacobs or David M. Jacobs?
I'll have to go back and look at the book, but I saw that and I said, that's not the same guy, is it? But
no, I'm definitely not a writer for hire.
Oh.
I'm not. Once you've, because I always said I would never go work on somebody else's show, but I kind of enjoyed doing that for the last 10 years. Being the White Knight, but I don't want to get back into it. It's too. I'm in a different place now. I would love to have, whoever, if they do, let's say they do very well with this Gary and Balsaway, and they decide to do a Knots resumption or reboot or recreation. I would like to be more involved in that than I was with Dallas. I had one meeting with Cynthia, but they were really terrified that I was going to. But anyway, I didn't really have a big participation. And I don't want to participate. Let's see what happens with it. I'm not saying I wouldn't go in and
maybe
say, how about doing this, and leave, Right. Because I know that I wouldn't want, if I were running a show now, I wouldn't want me there, looking over my shoulder.
Right. It's like whoever takes over Star Wars doesn't want George Lucas just hovering there.
Oh, my God. Even George Lucas couldn't do it. Really couldn't come up to the standard that he set from.
Right. Okay. Colin, anything?
Yeah, I think there was just talking about the fans, and as you just asked Josh in a previous question. One of the things now, I feel there's a pressure in the new social media age with Twitter and Facebook and websites, with fans having more of a direct contact, and there's a real kind of pressure on, because there's that direct dialogue. There seems to be a pressure from the fans on producers and stuff to do certain things.
Yes. So you're going back to Knots Landing and the.
Yeah, so I was saying there's a kind of more of a dialogue with fans, and I wondered if during the original, when you were doing Knots Landing, if you had like a lot of feedback from fans via letters or whatever, and if you ever took that on board, or you just kind of ignored it.
I was every Knots Landing came on Thursday night. Every Friday morning, I would go back to Studio City. There's this deli called Arts. A lot of people have breakfast. And I would go in and listen to all of the waitresses, all the tell me, evaluate last night's show. And see who they liked and who they didn't like. And just get a feel for it. And then I'd walk down Ventura Boulevard. And in the course of all those years, I would stop at the optician. I really got... so that's about what I had. I also got very good at seeing when I was introduced to somebody, or introduce myself on a plane or whatever, introduce somebody if they had reservations, or a lot of times they hadn't even seen it. Not funny, but I would always kind of get. I always wanted to know as much as possible from as many people as possible outside of the industry. What they think of the show, and not making anybody an expert, because there are no experts. It's just audiences. And I didn't like. I probably would have enjoyed the input. I had letters, and I would generally answer them if they were lucid and about something really solved the problem. And I'd go anywhere. Yeah, I do like to talk about it, but I didn't. But again, as I didn't need to talk to more people. I always remind myself that I wrote Dallas was my first thing when I didn't know anything. So I had to recapture that wonderful state of not knowing anything. I never quite recaptured it, but my Friday mornings in Studio City were. I saw a ABC executive who we were doing. I met him for breakfast there at Arts, and then afterwards we walked down the street together, parking somewhere, and he couldn't believe it because he told the story all over town. But I guess everybody was then going to Arts or their local deli and trying to recreate that. But it was fun. It was fun. I do need input.
So do you find that the increase of the social media today has created more pressure or more feedback for the people working on shows today? Do you think that it would?
I don't know. I think it's probably nice for them. I don't know. I don't have any. Well, I have a couple of friends that have shows, but we usually don't talk about them. Sort of interesting. I read a couple of his interviews with Cynthia when she first went on. I thought she looked like she was having a good time. It's a different world. It is a different world. And I'm glad I was in it at the time I was. And I'm sort of mildly envious of the freedom that some of the new guys get. In television, making television, freedom is the most creative freedom is the most coveted thing, and that's why I always say I never complain about my first Dallas deal, which was because it was my first thing. Is that because Dallas was my first thing, I always had that freedom. I never, almost 20 years afterwards, I never had. If I went and pitched a show and a new show and the network didn't want to do it, that was also the good news. And then, I didn't have to shoot a pilot this spring. So it took all that pressure off. But I don't know that doing those things online create pressure. Does it liberate? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I guess there's more freedom with the new Dallas being on cable, I guess, as opposed to a major network.
Well, but there are more people looking over your shoulder too.
Yeah. But saying that, actually, I think the original Dallas miniseries seemed more daring than even now in many respects.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I happen to believe that. I think Dallas, what it was audacious, and what it later became was safe, and what it is now, I think, is I won't say it's safe, but it's not audacious enough. And by audacity, it only means if you think of something like, make the white black, do it. Not that that's so audacious anymore, but just do it. And if you want the girl to have sex with a guy who may later prove to be related, do it and worry about that later. Just do it. Don't take 12 weeks to build up a story. Do it in 4, so that it has some shock value. And
kind of like that.
And that's it.
Kind of like that.
I'm sorry.
Kind of like that book that was written.
The Lee Raintree book.
Oh, the Lee Raintree book that was written.
Oh man, is that the one? Is that the one with Sue Ellen? Is that the? No, the Lee Raintree book's a big book, right? A big in size. There was a smaller novelization of the first 5.
Yeah, I think that was it, and it was quite controversial. It's where Sue Ellen was raped, and she enjoyed it.
Remember the episode where they during the hurricane and the two
Brian
the two
Dennehy
guys come and they make Brian Dennehy and I forgot the other guy.
Luther Frick and Peyton Allen.
Yeah, and you guys are really good. You're in the book. They take her in the back and tuck her, I don't like that, which we didn't do in television,
Yeah, and in it, I believe, if I recall, she enjoyed it.
Well, I think we're just about at the end anyway, but that book was interesting because I think JR turned out to be Lucy's father.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, that would.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, with and Baleen. Yeah.
Well, maybe after that scene, I just said I'll stop here and read this scene over and over again.
Yeah, actually, funny talking about it. Did you ever contemplate making, or was that just in that book, Lucy's father? Was that something that ever crossed your mind?
Never. Lucy's father had to be, first David Aykroyd and then Ted Shackelford. So she had 2 fathers. 2 actors playing the part. But no, I always thought it was necessary. I mean, she had enough problems. I don't know if she was something else. God, she was...
And it's weird how she never transitioned over to Knots Landing for whatever reason.
She did one.
She did one, and then it was almost like she was never
I never
really
wanted those characters. Yeah, I never want them on Knots Landing because every time we had a show with them on Knots Landing, it didn't work. And it was because it was easy for me to diagnose the problem. They were different scales. Yeah. JR came over and slept with Donna. But Donna existed on the scale of on the size of reality, of groundedness, and he was bigger than life. And you couldn't,
And Donna and Larry actually worked together on an old show in the early 70s, which was interesting. And
I heard
David Wayne was their boss.
Oh, right, that's right.
That was The Good Life. And
is that what it's called, The Good Life?
The Good Life. And Larry and Donna were actually married, a married couple.
I do think I remember that, but I just don't remember it anymore.
But they did have an interesting chemistry when you got them together. Just you can't trust each other type.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. But like Larry, they were they were in the wrong show. It was no excitement to Knots Landing when we had Kristen.
Yeah, she turned up, and what did she do? Fooled around with Kenny Ward?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that too. Kenny was actually a very funny guy. I didn't learn that till later. the actor. I would have made him funnier. But no. He might be working on his own show today. Okay, so what else?
I think that's everything I have.
Yeah, I think that covers. Yeah.
Listen, if you have any more, if you need any more, just pop an email and I'll pop you back or give me a call.
Brilliant. That's very kind of you.
Well, because you can tell I enjoy this.
Well, it's really been great getting your insight and perspective on everything, and just hearing the history. And you talk to the actors a lot on these interviews, and to talk to someone behind the scenes, it's really fresh. It's something you don't get to do that often.
Yeah, well, we did the DVD at Dallas, and they asked me to do the commentary with Larry. And
wasn't Charlene there? Yeah.
Yeah, I said that was Charlene. And we went down to the recording theater, and after, as we're, something scripted, and you just sort of go and talk. And when we took our first break, I felt horrible. I was the only one talking. And I said to the producer, I feel like I'm hogging everything, but they're not saying anything. You should have told me like this. Because the actors I know, and the writers know. They know the story, they know where it came from, all that. The actors didn't. It's always like it. So after that, you could actually hear me becoming sort of the MC instead of the. Mm-hmm. Didn't you think, Larry? Wasn't that? Were you there, Larry? So it becomes a little more democratic.
Now I'm going to have to go back and watch again just to pay attention to that.
Yeah, it's just what it was.
So yeah, talking of DVDs, I mean, so Knots Landing that got to season 2, and there was no everyone's not a lot of unhappy fans about the rest of the series not coming out.
Well, I guess the first one didn't. Sure, that's what the problem with Knots. I mean, it doesn't have the audience. Some person who interviewed me recently talked about the 1 week, and she actually knew the week where Knots Landing finished first in the ratings. And I said, but if you check a little bit farther, you'll find that both Dallas and Dynasty were preempted that week. That is true. So we really weren't, as I said, we weren't a show that was popular within the industry because they were all watching the Bochco shows, and which were very popular in the industry. I was watching the Bochco show, so I'd already seen it. So there it goes. I have to go, but as I said, please call me at will.
Brilliant. Definitely. Thank you very much.
Okay, if you need anything more.
Fantastic.
Okay, thanks a lot. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Ewing Barbecue Cast Archive Interview Series. Stay tuned for future cast interviews from the archives, and we'll see you next time. Y'all come back now, you hear?